welcome to the Backyard Bourbon broadcast. How y'all are? Hey, it's Jeremy, and as Bill Burr would say, I'm just checking in on you. Hey, I hope you've been enjoying the podcast of the interview with the distillers of Wilderness Trail. Again, a ton of thanks to both Shane Baker and Pat Heist, co-founders of Wilderness Trail Distillery out there in Danville, Kentucky, for taking the time to do that interview with me. I'm sure they had much better things to do than sit and answer my endless questions, so I really appreciate that. I've got 2 more parts waiting in the wings, parts 3 and 4, but I figured I'd mix things up and tell the story and also review another bourbon for you. The good folks at Blade & Bow sent me a sample of their fine product and have been ever so patient with me to get around to tasting it, so without further eloquence, let's get right to that. So Blade & Bow, they get their name from 2 parts of those old skeleton keys, you know, like pirate keys, castle keys. I don't know what I'm talking about. The blade and shaft. Oh, God, that doesn't even... Let me start that part over. The 2 parts of the old skeleton keys. The blade, shaft, and the ornate bow. There. The blade and the bow. Okay, according to their website, the brand is a homage to the 5 keys that once hung from the door of the old Stitzel-Weller distillery. Quote, "These keys represented the 5 steps of crafting bourbon: grains, yeast, fermentation, distillation, and aging. But more importantly, they grew to symbolize the Southern traditions of hospitality, warmth, and enjoying the finer things in life." Well, we're all about all 8 of those things on the Backyard Bourbon broadcast. So this is their Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, their floor model, if you will, their base, their This Is Us brand, if you take my meaning. Okay, on the nose, I got strong hints of vanilla and also picked up some sweet roasted grain. It's very subtle, almost like it comes and goes. It just back and forth, just kind of, it's there, but not all up in your grill. On the palate, I noticed the corn almost immediately, followed by caramel or vanilla. Very tasty. It's at 40% alcohol, so it's 80 proof. Blade & Bow uses what they call the Solera system, and what it basically does is mixes older Stitzel-Weller bourbon with younger whiskeys. According to Blade & Bow, the system never completely drains the older barrels that hold the leftover Stitzel-Weller. So this mixture of new and old kind of explains the confusion that goes on with your palate. You get hints of the old and you get hints of the new, kind of back and forth, like a more mature, more fuller character bourbon shows up, and then it disappears into a lighter, lesser full-bodied taste. I really wish I had more of it to really consider what I tasted, but what I got I really did appreciate. It's very unique in its own way. And it also made me want to explore this whole Stitzel-Weller thing. You people in Kentucky are just throwing that around like the rest of us know what you're talking about. Well, most of the rest of us know what you're talking about. I obviously have no clue. So anyway, thank you very much. Very good product. I really enjoyed that. So let's get to the story. This is the story of Adam Jones and the Invisible Panther. The story of a faulty light bulb and the imaginary terrors that go with it. Back when my wife and I were dating about 1,000 years ago, we used to go camping with my roommates quite often. In fact, it seems just about every weekend in the summertime we'd be up in the hills, normally in a place north of Red Feather, Colorado, called Cherokee Park. It offered several advantages over anything closer for these men in their early 20s and their 4-wheel drive vehicles. For one, there was minimal adult supervision, and by minimal I mean none, and by supervision I mean someone in a sober position to say, "Put that down or you kill someone." It was also gorgeous, and by gorgeous I mean someone saying every 5 minutes, "Holy cow, this is gorgeous." And finally, it had miles and miles of off-road 4-wheel drive paths and non-paths that were perfectly suited for several young men in their early 20s with minimal adult supervision and their aforementioned 4-wheel drive vehicles. On one of the trips, we were running through the mini beaver ponds that crop up every spring when Eddie Giffen's 4Runner got water in its engine and seized up. I pulled my pickup around and started the long process, which would end up taking over 8 hours, of towing the 4Runner down the mountain. My truck, by the way, is the truck I still drive to this day, the indomitable four-wheel drive extended cab Toyota Tacoma. It's a 1998. It's got over 175,000 miles on it, and I'll continue to run it for another 20-some years. I've had it for 19. So, God bless you, Toyota Tacoma. Since we started the whole process after 1 p.m. in the mountains, it would mean after dark before we were finished. And why did it take us that long? Well, there are several reasons for that, and I'm glad you asked. They are as follows. Number one, I am not very bright, and this cannot be emphasized enough. Number two, I have friends who, although they are very nice and kind and wonderful, and I do anything for them and they for me, are not very bright either, because they befriended the very unbright individual mentioned in reason number one. Number three, regardless of your religious or political views, your astrological sign, or your origin of birth, darkness comes at some point every day. I know this doesn't come as a shock to intelligent people here, but intelligent people don't figure here into this conversation. See reasons number one and number two if this still isn't clear. Number four, toe straps purchased from Kmart are rarely a wise purchase, and we'll get to that in a second. Number five, things always take longer in the mountains. Cooking food, finding a campsite, driving home, towing a broken 4Runner. The more you need something, the longer it takes. I guess the sole exception to that would be the accidental lighting of forest fires, and those seem to take no time at all. Okay, as I said, we had begun to take Eddie's vehicle down the winding mountain road with some very old, and by all accounts, very cheap toe straps. We all expected the trip to take us 2 hours max, so a few people, including the star of our story, Adam Jones, decided to watch over the campsite while the rest of us made the trip down the mountain. I'm surprised we even had a toe strap, and I have no idea how we came up with the 2-hour estimate. The fact we survived up there even 1 hour by ourselves is a true testament to God's mercy on the ignorant and the idiotic. My job in this whole ordeal was to drive the truck down the hill, towing Eddie's 4Runner. Derek Beeman's job was to sit in the bed of my truck and monitor the tow strap connected to the 4Runner. Eddie Giffen's job was to try to steer his deceased 4Runner behind my truck. The tow strap's job was simple. Snap in half about every quarter mile. And it did that without fail. We'd all have to unload, scratch our heads, assign blame, curse the tow strap and its purchaser, argue over which half was longer, come to blows, laugh, spit, shake hands, then tie knots in both ends, and swear to each other that this time it would hold better. 5 minutes later, the strap would break, and we'd start the whole process over again. By the time we got Eddie to the tow truck, it was pitch dark outside, and a few of the people back at camp had grown a little concerned that we hadn't made it back yet. Adam decided to hop on his brand new four-wheeler and head our way to see what was taking so much time. What Adam was about to find out was that his four-wheeler had developed a nasty habit of headlight trouble. The vibration of his four-wheeler made the bulb jiggle loose from the socket as he drove down the bumpy, dusty road. Anyone who's camped in the mountains knows that when it gets dark, it gets dark. And when your headlight goes out, it gets too dark, too fast, way too quickly. When it first happened, Jones was able to fix it with the last available sunlight, but by the third time it happened, it was almost 10, too dark to search for any missing bulb, and he had no idea where he was. He started to wonder why he hadn't packed a flashlight. It was at that inconvenient point that reality decided to take a break from the long-standing relationship it had maintained with our Mr. Jones and left him completely at the mercy of his own imagination. He started hearing noises and growling, and he started to think that maybe the growling was no longer coming from his stomach. And then he started to hear lips smacking and teeth chomping, and he was pretty sure it wasn't coming from his four-wheeler. And then he started seeing imaginary animals wearing funny hats in the pitch darkness, and one of them was driving a Segway, which he thought was a little bit odd, but who was he to judge? And then something brushed his leg, and for a moment he thought it was a nice soft bunny, but then it snarled at him too, and he decided nice soft bunnies don't snarl, and if they do, they're not the kind of bunnies he'd like to associate with, regardless of their texture. And then he was almost positive he saw a pterodactyl, and he decided that regardless of where you are in the world, especially when the lights go out, you should never, ever, ever see a pterodactyl, especially not one with a t-shirt that says Windsor High, class of 1994. And then he saw a light. So this is it, he whispered to himself. This is how it all goes down. I go out like a sucker to some Pink Panther driving a Segway. Only it wasn't a Segway. It was my Toyota Tacoma, and the Pink Panther driving it wasn't a Pink Panther, but me, making like a bread truck hauling buns at 40 miles an hour towards Mr. Completely Paralyzed in a State of Terror Jones. We all jumped out of the truck and started yelling, "Jonesy, what are you doing in the middle of the road?" As reality decided to recommit itself fully to Adam Jones, he told us of the light bulb and the headlight and the panthers and bunnies and the partially clothed pterodactyl, and he swore he'd never go anywhere without a flashlight. We packed him and his four-wheeler into the truck and made it back to camp to tell and retell the, quote, "it's funny now" story. The next morning, as we packed up to explore what we were pretty sure was still Colorado, Adam opened the seat of his four-wheeler where he discovered that his lovely girlfriend, Erin Blank, who is now his wife, Erin Jones, had put his flashlight the day before. She just hadn't bothered to tell him. Well, that'll about do it today for the Backyard Bourbon broadcast. We do hope you enjoyed today's show. Great big thank you goes out to the wonderful folks at Blade & Bow. I really enjoyed your project. Thank you for the sample. It was wonderful to be in contact with you good people. I would also like to thank the Jingle Punks. They're the ones that made the music you're listening to right now. Thanks a lot, guys. Wonderful to find free music on YouTube. Look them up. They have a huge selection on YouTube music that is, for the most part, free. And they don't even require you to credit them. So I'd like to credit them. Jingle Punks, thanks a lot, guys. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I put a lot of beautiful pictures I take for each podcast on there, and I think you'll enjoy them. Well, that's it. God bless, and remember, always pack a flashlight. And whatever beverage you choose to enjoy, especially if it's bourbon, enjoy it responsibly. Also, get your pet spayed or neutered. Post no bills. All rights reserved. Also, get your pet spayed or neutered. Post no bills. All rights reserved. No shirt. No shoes. No service. Red zone is for loading and unloading passengers only. Do not pass go. Do not collect no